Welcome to the Pump Take Sports Show. Today, me and Nate are going to be talking about a team that this guy used to play for, actually. I didn't really realize until I just looked at myself now, but the New York Knicks, the jumbo jets of the NBA, you might call them. But yeah, they've been doing some offseason stuff, and they're a big team, obviously, in the NBA. So I'll list out the things that they've done so far just to, refresh everyone's memory. They have a new regime in the front office. Leon Rose is the new, I guess, like general manager or director of basketball operations or something, but he's running the show now. So this is his first year as in a Knicks off season. So of course there's pressure with that. The five major things they did: Austin Rivers, 3 years, 10 million. Nerlens Noel, 1 year, 5 million. Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, 1 year, 2.3 million. Elfrid Payton, 1 year, 5 million as well. And Alec Burks, 1 year, 6 million. Alec Burks is fully guaranteed. But me and Ian were just talking a little bit before this, so we'll just reiterate it. We said what we like, the biggest thing what we like about this is that they didn't sign any big, dumb Knicks contracts. The two guys that I have written down here being Hayward and like Hassan Whiteside. I'm glad they didn't pay those guys like stupid amounts of money, but I know you agree with me on that, Ian.
Yeah, 100%. It's just in general, they didn't really sign any free agent that was even projected to command big money, which is huge. And even bigger than that, it's like it just feels like every year the Knicks have this big, like what the fuck series of moves.
Mm-hmm.
Like last year, it was when they just picked up like 87 power forwards, and you're just like, what are the Knicks even doing? This year, there was none of that. And it was actually like a surprisingly quiet offseason. I know Knicks fans, of course, like for the most part, they wanted that big name like a Westbrook or a CP3 to come in and kind of just right the ship, so to speak. But I honestly really like that they didn't do anything like that. Just kind of bridging the gap with this new regime, like you said. I'm a big fan of that. Just the overarching philosophy here.
Me as well. And the thing is too is that they didn't spend a lot of money either, which is a big thing. Like the guys,
all 1 year deals.
Yeah, well, other than Austin Rivers, who apparently, according to Knicks media, don't know about how reliable that is, but Knicks media said that Austin Rivers is, and I quote, ready to be a part of the rebuild. So Austin Rivers is committed to not being on a team that is necessarily winning a lot of games. And the Knicks, this is one big point that I've written down too, is that a lot of the Knicks are still a big market place. People want to be in New York City. Like, I mean, you know that as a Giants fan, people the New York media is big, and
it's all we got going for us.
Yeah, and well, it's exciting to be part of it, like a New York team, right? And the big thing is that because they didn't spend a lot of money this season, they have so much money for next offseason, which is great. They have their books cleared up, and it happens every year. Everyone's like, who are the Knicks going to get? But, next offseason is actually full of players that, I'm sure they would be happy to get with all of that extra money that they have.
Yeah, and I think a big thing is like every offseason, it feels like there's like last offseason, it was we're going to get Zion, we're going to get KD to come, we're going to get Kyrie. But it's like at some point you have to build a foundation that those guys will want to come to, like maybe some young players. And maybe, to get that type of player, you have to trade away some of those young players. But still, if you want to compete with these teams that are going to be in the running for these supermax players that are going to be coming to the free agent market next year, you've got to prove that you're headed in the right direction. And I think a lot of what they did this offseason signals that I think they're ready to make that move finally.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same thing with the Tom Thibodeau signing. I think like trying to build like a culture, right? They're trying to build like a foundation to build upon, right? Instead of just signing silly Gordon Hayward for insane amounts of money, which makes no sense and isn't going to do anything for them in the long run. They're building like a strong foundation to build a castle on. Well, that's what they're hoping in the rebuild, right? So that's with the Thibodeau signing. Guys like Austin Rivers, Alec Burks, Elfrid Payton, these aren't bad players. Like these are guys who can come in, and what I like is that they're not really good enough altogether to actually like go anywhere, but they're not bad enough to not have like a structure, right? Some sort of culture and foundation. But
that's exactly what I was thinking. Like they're just willing to accept kind of whatever role on this Knicks team that's in a big transition. Those are the types of guys that they should have went out and got, and they did. So
yeah, exactly.
Good on them.
And the other thing too is that I have written down here the Lakers and the Clippers now both have their money tied up in things. So especially with the most recent AD and LeBron extensions, like the Lakers are obviously maybe the most what's the word I'm looking for? Like appealing destination, like LA in general, right? But now, and you look at the Nets too. The Nets don't have a lot of money to be thrown around with KD and Kyrie,
Nope.
Jared Allen. So the New York Knicks are still one of these big market teams with, if this idea of creating this culture and structure works with these guys for 1 year, you have another year of RJ Barrett, another year of Mitchell Robinson. You still have young players that are developing, and you won't be good enough to go anywhere, but you won't be bad. Like they'll still have a lottery pick. There's no doubt about that, right? And then in next year's draft, it's super stacked. And so you draft the guy that maybe does turn your franchise around and still have those really young players with not a lot of money on the team to kind of like not a lot of money tied up in the team to keep moving forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. If I'm a Knicks fan, I'm happy. I know a lot of them aren't, because there was no big splash move, but there wasn't really a big splash move to make, even if it would have had to have been a big reach for them to make that kind of move. So like I said, if I'm a Knicks fan, I'm happy. As far as the I don't know like the individual players that they sign. But I think all of them were good moves. But I think also the Obi Toppin pick, in general, I really liked that kind of move. Like you said, next year's draft is really going to be where the big talent to come in is going to be. And this year, there wasn't a lot of that. Famously, it was kind of a draft that was bereft of talent compared to other drafts. But I think they got a nice solid player that they can plug in there, and he can be a part of the future.
Yeah, they absolutely did. And, people joke about even this year, the Knicks getting their point guard. They need their point guard of the future, right? And imagine next year if they actually do have the capital to get their point guard of the future, then you have RJ Barrett, a young shooting guard who, he can't flourish in this current environment. So and he's only, 19 or 20? He still has lots of time to develop. And then you draft Obi Toppin, kind of a high-flying power forward. You still have Mitchell Robinson, who every defensive statistic says that he's amazing, even though the Knicks aren't very good.
Let's bench him.
yeah, exactly. So they've got Mitch Robinson, RJ Barrett, Obi Toppin. Those are some young guys, and Kevin Knox has been bust in half, but still they do have other young players on that team that, if they get their point guard, their guy that can lead them into the next generation, that's a good young core to kind of start working with there.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like I was saying about the Toppin pick in particular, you kind of mentioned it there. They had recently been drafting all these super young, 19-year-old projects, which is totally Obi Toppin is still a project, especially defensively. But he's an older, more experienced player. I think his floor is a lot higher than a Kevin Knox coming in with his Fortnite jacket. And like you said, he's been a total bust. And same thing with Frank Ntilikina. I know Knicks fans want him to be a thing, but really not looking like that's ever going to happen.
No, it isn't, man. And it's a good point about his age too, because I think he's 22 or something like that. And so he spent some more year in college, right? So he's got the I guess maybe experience that some of these other draft picks that never worked out have.
Yeah.
And so, I guess we can talk about what we don't like. I have two things kind of just to highlight about what I don't like. It's weird talking about more about what I like about the Knicks offseason than what I don't like. But what I don't like, one little just caveat, is that Tom Thibodeau traditionally isn't a coach that likes to lose games. So I think if they are going for this high lottery pick, that might be difficult for him to kind of accept and work with maybe. So, that's just one thing. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but that's just kind of Tom Thibodeau just has a, coach just usually isn't part of that culture.
Yeah, I definitely do. I agree with that. Especially Thibodeau, I know loves to play his veterans. He's not going to be throwing Obi Toppin in there right away or anything like that. He's not going to play or even quickly. I don't expect him to get a lot of playing time. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad, obviously you want them to play for their for development's sake, get some time out on the floor. But at the same time, it's not like Thibodeau is playing with an all-star caliber roster here, it's not even if he wants to, even if he was trying to,
Mm,
win as many games as possible, they're still going to be a lottery team just because of the talent is not there, like the
exactly.
high end talent.
Yeah.
So I agree with you. Like, you know, I don't know, obviously you want to get the highest pick possible, but
Hmm.
at the same time, I don't really think, it's kind of a lose-lose situation. No matter what they do, whether they try and win or not, they're going to lose because they just aren't that good at the end of the day. But yeah, I do see your point there.
Yeah. And the other thing that I, have written down is kind of related to the just losing thing is that like being bad and having that kind of Knicks stink on you does still keep stars away. Like no matter what way you want to slice it, the weight of being a team that is, I don't want to say tanking, but like, not obviously competing to their full extent of what their money situation is, they could be doing more. And that's a tough scene to walk into, I think, as a superstar, unless you really want to be the guy to save New York City. But, this kind of relates to what we were talking about earlier. With the contracts that they signed with these kind of role player guys, they're trying to just build a foundation. That's the
Mhm.
biggest thing, right? And so, hopefully they don't pick number one overall because then that shows you didn't really have any sort of foundation. But you want them to still be picking high enough where they can get that game changer.
Yeah, I think there's enough talent in next year's draft. I mean, I'm not going to act like I've studied it closely, but from what I hear,
Yeah.
it's pretty deep. So I don't think they need the number one overall pick. I think it is more important that you kind of establish that. I want to say winning culture, but like we've said 1,000 times, it's not going to be a winning team. But just prove you're not like a total organizational mess like they've been
Yeah,
like the
absolutely.
last long time,
Yeah. And I don't,
which I think they can do.
yeah, man. And I don't want to steal this from whatever source I heard it from, but I saw a comparison somewhere on the internet saying that when the Nets made the playoffs, um, they made the playoffs without Kyrie and KD. Obviously, they were recent acquisitions, but that Nets team made the playoffs and showed that they kind of had some sort of structure, foundation, or
Mhm.
whatever you want to call it. And so that automatically makes them more of a desirable target for guys like KD and Kyrie. So you want the Knicks to kind of have like a bargain bin version of making the playoffs the way the Nets did when they were without their superstars. I think that's
Yeah.
what their foundation should try and look like.
Yeah, I mean, and they did have D'Angelo Russell when they did that, which
Fair.
helps because he's just that
Yeah, yeah,
level.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
he's
Fair.
that kind of, he's a tier up from any player currently on
He absolutely is. Yeah.
the Knicks. But I mean, hey, they have a lot of young players that maybe could, like, RJ could be that level of player. It's not like D'Angelo's like some top 10 player or anything. Like
Mhm.
that's an attainable thing for RJ to be. The other thing I did kind of want to talk about was in particular was Julius Randle.
Yeah.
I think he's a very interesting piece on this team because a lot of Knicks fans obviously wanted him and that contract off the team,
Hmm.
but because of the caliber of player he is and because of that contract, I feel like it was really hard to move him this offseason.
Absolutely.
And I honestly like that the Knicks just didn't say, you know what, screw it, we'll just take anything to get him off the team. Like
Hmm.
or even like I saw somebody on Twitter was talking about trading him to get Terry Rozier. It's like, what's the point of that? Like getting like
Yeah.
two bad contracts. Like I kind of like waiting and seeing, because like there's going to be a team, maybe multiple teams at the trade deadline next year that are looking for a Julius Randle
Yep.
and saying, you know what, screw it, we'll take on the bad contract just to get that contributor.
Yep.
Um, and I think waiting it out just to get an actual draft pick from him, it was a smart move for the Knicks.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And Julius Randle still has value. Like Julius
Exactly.
Randle might like, I don't know if this is a hot take or whatever, but Julius Randle might be the best actual basketball player on that team right now. Like,
Yeah, I don't think that's. I'm a big Mitch Robinson fan, but
yeah,
I
no,
don't think that's out of this world.
don't get me wrong, man. I like Mitch Robinson a lot for the future, right? But if we're talking about who's their like main contributor, like RJ obviously shoots the most and maybe scores the most, but their actual like main guy, their main like real contributor, it might be Julius Randle. And if we're
Mhm.
talking about building that foundation, Julius Randle's a piece of that. And it doesn't matter if he has a bad contract on the Knicks because they have so much damn money that it doesn't really affect them in a negative way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with everything you said, man. Like it's smart to flip him later rather than like panic move him now and not
Yeah.
really get a result, anything back for it.
100% agree.
Yeah, man. And I mean, the New York Knicks, they're an interesting team. They're fun every year to kind of, see what they do. But I mean, I think the league is just better when the Knicks are good. It's kind of funny to have them be, crappy, but I would like to see them kind of get their stuff together. And so hopefully everything we talked about here today, not that they're going to listen to us or anything, but they kind of have that mindset in the back of their head to kind of build that foundation that they need.
Yeah, Knicks trending up. Weird thing to say, but we'll see. It's looking like a step in the.
Yeah, it absolutely is, man. Well, thank you for coming on, talking to me about some New York basketball as a New York football fan. And yeah, check out our other videos. We've got lots of other stuff. We're really close to 100 subscribers. So if you're a Knicks fan, you don't mind subscribing. We're getting real close. You might be our 100th subscriber. That'd be kind of fun. But yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you guys soon. See ya.